Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the moment that we've all been waiting for. I would like to invite the finalists for the grand finals of the OIC Intervarsity Debating Championship 2010. The flags that you see before you are the flags of the participating countries attending this tournament. On my right, we have government, which is International Islamic University of Malaysia. And on my left, we have side opposition, which is Institute of Business Administration, Dhaka. The motion for this grand finals is, this House believes that the OIC should have its own elected representative. A few ground rules in today's grand finals. Just for those who do not know what the ground rules are, each speaker is given 7 minutes to speak. Then the bell will be rung, or a clap will be given at the first minute, indicating that points of information should be given and taken. And at the 6th minute, which indicates the end of giving and taking of points of information, a clap will be given twice at the 7th minute, and a reply speaker would be giving a speech after the whip speaker, which is the 3rd speaker, for 4 minutes. Now, to get the ball rolling, let's invite the Prime Minister of today's debate, Khalidah Nazihah of IIUM.
Ladies and gentlemen, Islam has never opposed democracy. That is why in the days of the Khalifa, even when the Khalifa was appointed by the Prophet, the Khalifa needed to be endorsed by the general public and by society. In those days, this endorsement came in the form of handshakes in mosques, whereby when you shake the hand of the Khalifa, you are therefore endorsing his appointment. But we think the modern day has more sophisticated systems to acknowledge things like mandate and to acknowledge things like authority, which is why we believe the Organization of Islamic Conference, as an international organization which claims it represents the Islamic Ummah, Mr. Speaker, needs to have this sophisticated system which we call the elected parliament. We think, Mr. Speaker, this is a value judgment on how the OIC should progress as an organization. We think on government side that they should recognize democracy as a value to firstly ensure proper representation within the member countries, but secondly, so that the OIC presides with a legitimacy that reverberates not only within its member countries, but throughout the international arena. We think the status quo makes the OIC toothless as an international organization, and that its policies does not, Mr. Speaker, receive full mandate. What is the status quo? In the status quo, we think there only exists executive representation. There is no proper voting or proper representation. Therefore, the voices of the Muslim world is only channeled either sporadically or via the Conference of Foreign Ministers, of whom we cannot fully ascertain the mandate of, because not all member countries have democratic systems which elect these representatives. So what do we want? We think we can follow a European Union or even a United Nations model, Mr. Speaker, where we have an established elected parliament. What this means is there's a system where each country in their home countries need to decide by way of election a representative to the OIC. And when these representatives are elected, they come to Parliament, Mr. Speaker, and they receive a vote generally. So what does a Parliament do, right? Obviously, it decides on common policies. And in Parliament, you get to debate these policies, and every individual is empowered by a vote. This is important, Mr. Speaker. We think if you don't elect a representative, you won't have a representative in the OIC. We don't think this will antagonize members, because we think most OIC members have very large stakes in the OIC, given that the OIC represents something more than just politics, Mr. Speaker. It's the Islamic solidarity, and that they have, Mr. Speaker, they are the only, most of these countries only have the OIC as the most legitimate body which they feel they represent. No points? I'll proceed, right? Firstly, I'll tell you why there's a need to actually have this, why there's a need to have an elected parliament. Firstly, we tell you, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the nature of OIC countries and the demographic, we think there are huge disparities in terms of individual members. There are huge disparities in terms of economic power. There's huge disparities in terms of political power. Therefore, we don't think a conference of foreign ministers is enough of an avenue, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that these people truly represent the countries that they say represent. What ends up happening, Mr. Speaker, in these meetings, we think, is mainly domination. And when smaller countries don't have an allocated vote for themselves, Mr. Speaker, we don't think their voices are fully heard. What an elected parliament does, Mr. Speaker, is it empowers each voice equally, because the forum for debate is larger and it assures equal airtime for every candidate who holds mandate for their own countries. Before I move on to my second level, you seem to have a problem.
Ma'am, why do you think at the first place these people cannot vote in several countries to decide their own leaders? How will they be able to decide who will be representing them in OIC?
For whatever reason it is, we told you, we agree there are political disparities and differences within these countries, but we think we need to compel them at some point if you are to be recognized by the OIC. We respect your sovereignty internally, but when you come to us, an organization, you need to pose a united front. We don't think elections are impossible by any standards. But secondly, we tell you, Mr. Speaker, we have to look at what happens when a vote is mandated by an actual population. Because we think, Mr. Speaker, we need to understand that the cornerstone for any international organization is legitimacy. Because these people have a duty to interact with not only other member countries, but a duty to interact with people outside of the OIC as representatives of, Mr. Speaker, the policies that they say they stand for and the opinions that they say they stand for. Therefore, we think if this is really the case, we think these countries or these members need to gain the legitimacy of, Mr. Speaker, saying that I have the mandate and I have the power to represent my people. We think this is important, Mr. Speaker, given that the only way legitimacy is derived in today's modern world is if you are truly representative of the people whom you say you represent. But secondly, Mr. Speaker, and we feel also equally importantly, we have to acknowledge the duty of the OIC in carrying the mandate of representing the Muslim world. We live in a world of Islamophobia, where people automatically associate Islam with bombs. People automatically associate Islam with terrorism. But we don't think, Mr. Speaker, if you truly look at what Islam stands for, never in any scriptures has it said that we oppose democracy, we oppose choice, and we oppose, Mr. Speaker, the ability of people to choose their own governments. We think any body which claims that it carries the Muslim name and it carries the name of the Ummah and say we stand for Islam has a duty to tell the world that Islam is not juxtaposed to democracy. Islam is not juxtaposed to ensuring rights to people and choice to people, Mr. Speaker. We in fact think this is a perfect balance between respecting sovereignty of countries and also the internal affairs of countries, and also, Mr. Speaker, representing yourself as an international organization. Because these countries can very well proceed with whatever system they have in their internal matters, because we respect that, but we think there needs to be a boundary and a line drawn. And that boundary is when you claim you represent Islam as an organization, as 57 member states who came together and agreed that we will represent Islam. The only way OIC can carry forward as a legitimate body and a body that truly represents Islam is, Mr. Speaker, if they have an elected parliament. Thank you.